During the spring and summer of 1974, police in the Pacific Northwest were in panic. Young women from colleges across Washington and Oregon were disappearing at an alarming rate, and police had little evidence about who was behind it. In just 6 months, 6 women were abducted, and panic in the area reached a peak when Janice and Ott and Dennis Marie Neslin disappeared in broad daylight from a busy beach in Sammamish State Park Lake. But the boldest abductions also yielded the first real evidence in the case. The day Ott and Neslin disappeared, several other women recalled how they were approached by a man who tried and failed to lure them into his car. They told the authorities about an attractive young man with his arm tied, his car a brown Volkswagen Beetle, and the name he gave himself was Ted. After this description was made public, the police were contacted by 4 people who identified the same Seattle resident, Ted Bundy. Among these 4 people were Ted Bundy's ex-girlfriend, a close friend, a co-worker, and a psychology professor who taught Bundy. But police thought it was exaggerated and dismissed Ted Bundy as a suspect, believing it was unlikely that the culprit was a polite student with no previous criminal record. Ted Bundy has benefited from his appearance and social status several times throughout his life as a heartless serial killer, as one of the most notorious serial killers in history, killing at least 30 victims in 7 states in the 70s. For a while, he deceived everyone. The cops they didn't suspect, the prison guards he escaped from their facilities, the women he manipulated, the wife he married after his arrest. But he was, as his last lawyer put it, a definition of evil in human form. As Ted Bundy once said about himself, "I'm the coldest and heartless person you've ever met." Ted Bundy was born in Vermont, United States, in the Pacific Northwest, where he committed his most horrific crime. His mother, Eleanor Louise Coyle, and his unknown father, his grandparents, who were ashamed to carry their daughter out of wedlock, raised him as their child. Almost throughout his childhood, he believed that his mother was his sister. His grandfather regularly beat both Ted and his mother, causing her to run away with her son to live with her cousins in Tacoma, Washington. When Bundy was 5 years old, there, she met Eleanor and married hospital chef Johnny Bundy, who officially adopted young Ted Bundy and gave him his last name. And her husband, as Ted's mother remembered him, was affectionate and a kind-hearted man. But Bundy hated his stepfather and called him contemptuous, saying he wasn't too smart and didn't make a lot of money. Little is known for sure about what remains of Bundy's childhood, as he gave conflicting accounts of his early years to different biographers, generally describing an ordinary life punctuated by melancholy fantasies and reading pornographic magazines at an early age that influenced him strongly. Although the degree to which he acted is still unclear, the psychiatrist's assessment suggests a biological defect he may have inherited from his unknown father. Although Bundy described himself as a loner hanging out in the dirty streets at night to spy on women, many who remember Bundy from high school describe him as somewhat lovable. His university studies and the beginning of the killing wave. Ted Bundy graduated from high school in 1965, then attended nearby Puget Sound University, where he spent just 1 year before moving to the University of Washington to study Chinese. He briefly dropped out of school in 1968, but soon returned to psychology. During his time out of school, he visited the East Coast, where he probably first learned that the woman he believed to be his sister was actually his mother. Then, back at university, Bundy began dating Elizabeth Kluver, a divorcee with a daughter from Utah who worked as a secretary at the campus medical school, and later, Clover was among the first to report Bundy to police as a suspect in the Northwest Pacific murders. Among the 4 people police mentioned when they released the specifications was former Seattle police officer and Raul, who met Bundy around the same time while they were working at the Seattle Suicide Prevention Hotline. Roll also later wrote one of the biographies about Bundy for The Stranger Beside Me. In 1973, Bundy was admitted to the Puget Sound University Law School, but a few months later, he stopped attending classes, and then, in January 1974, disappearances began. The first known attack from Ted Bundy was not an actual murder, but an attack on 18-year-old Karen Sparks, a student and dancer at the University of Washington. Bundy broke into her apartment and hit her with a metal rod from the frame of her bed before sexually assaulting her with the same rod. His assault left her in a coma for 10 days and permanent disabilities. Karen Sparks was living with several other students who were falling asleep when the attack occurred, and survivor Sparks believes Ted didn't kill her because her roommate was talking in his sleep, so Ted thought someone had woken up and fled. She was found hours later with a pool of blood by one of the roommates and immediately contacted her mother and father. Ted Bundy's next victim and his first confirmed murder was Linda and Healy, another student at the University of Wisconsin. A month after his assault on Karen Sparks, Bundy broke into Healy's apartment early in the morning, knocked her unconscious, then took her to his car. After that, Bundy continued to target female students in the area, and he developed a technique. Approaching women while wearing a splint or appearing handicapped and asking them to help him put something in his car. He then beat them unconscious, tied them up, assaulted and killed them, then dumped the bodies in a remote location in the forest. Bundy often revisited these sites to have sex with decomposing corpses, and in some cases, Bundy would behead his victims and keep their skulls in his apartment, sleeping next to them. Bundy once said, "The final acquisition was, in fact, the killing of lives and then physical possession of remains." He explained, "Murder is not just a crime of lust or violence. The victim becomes property, a part of you. You and she become one forever. And the reasons you kill them or leave them become sacred to you, and you will always be attracted to them." Over the next 5 months, Bundy kidnapped and murdered 5 college students in the Pacific Northwest: Donna Gill Manson, Susan Ellen Rancourt, Roberta Kathleen Parks, Brenda Carol Poole, and Gorgon Hawkins. In response to this series of disappearances, the police called for a major investigation and recruited a number of different government agencies to help search for the missing girls. One such agency was the Washington State Department of Emergency Services, where Bundy worked, where Bundy met Carolyn Boone, a twice-divorced mother of 2 whom he dated and became lovers for a while, as the murders continued. As the hijackers' hunt continued, more witnesses gave descriptions matching Ted Bundy and his car, and some of his victims' bodies were discovered in the woods after Bundy was admitted to Utah Law School and moved to Salt Lake City. While staying there, he continued to assault and kill young women, including a trans traveler in Idaho and 4 teenage girls in Utah. His ex-girlfriend Clover knew that Bundy had moved to the area, and when she learned of the murders in Utah, she called the police again to confirm her suspicion that Bundy was behind the killings. There was now a growing pile of evidence pointing to Ted Bundy, and when Washington investigators collected their data, Bundy's name appeared at the top of the list of suspects. Unaware of the increased police interest in him, Bundy continued to kill, traveling to Colorado from his home in Utah to kill more young women there. Finally, in August 1975, Bundy was stopped while driving through a suburb of Salt Lake City, and police discovered masks, handcuffs, and blunt objects in the car. Then officers found his car, which he has since sold, where they discovered hair matching 3 of his victims. With this evidence, arrested him, where he was identified by one of the women he tried to kidnap. He was convicted of kidnapping and assault and imprisoned while police tried to file a massive murder case against him. Soon, for the first time in his life, he managed to escape from the stone. In 1977, he escaped from the law library in the courtroom in Aspen, Colorado. Because he was working as a private lawyer for himself, he was allowed access to the library during a break in the initial hearing. He was researching the laws related to his case, but the fact that he was his private advisor also meant that he was not restrained. And when he saw his opportunity, he took advantage of it. And because he smiled a lot and behaved calmly, the guards did not worry about him, and no one thought that he might escape. He jumped out of the window of the second floor of the library and ran away, disappearing among the trees before the guard returned to check on him and discover his escape. He planned to make his way to Mount Aspen, later breaking into a cabin to steal supplies, but resources were scarce, and it wasn't long before he changed his plan. Back in Aspen, he stole a car, and he thinks to get as far away as possible from the town. But the reckless speed with which he left Aspen made him observant. He was spotted by police officers, and he was arrested again 6 days after escaping. Bundy's next escape occurred just 6 months later, this time from the prison cell. After carefully studying the prison map, Bundy realized that his cell was directly under the prison chief's room. Only the 2 rooms were separated by poor construction. Bundy traded with another inmate for a small saw, and while his cellmates exercised or bathed, he worked away in the ceiling, scraping layer after layer of plaster. The area of the hole he made was very small, so he deliberately began to reduce meals in an attempt to lose weight. He also planned for the future, unlike last time, when his escape failed because he had no resources in the outside world. He stored a small pile of money smuggled to him by Carolyn Boone, the woman she later married in prison. When he was ready, Bundy finished the hole and crawled into the prison president's room, found the place vacant. He swapped his prison suit for the man's civilian clothes and walked outside the front prison doors. This time, he immediately stole a car and left the city for Florida. Bundy's intention was to stay out of the limelight, but life in Florida presented unexpected challenges, and because he was unable to show his identity, he couldn't get a job. So he went back to stealing for money, and the trend of violence was very strong. On January 15, 1978, 2 weeks after his escape, Bundy broke into the home of the Chi Omega Club on the campus of Florida State University. In just 15 minutes, he assaulted and killed Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy, after hitting them on the head and choking them with socks, then assaulting Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler, both of whom suffered horrific injuries, including broken jaws and tooth loss. He then broke into the apartment of Cheryl Thomas, who lived several blocks away, and beat her so hard that she permanently lost her hearing. He was still on the run on February 8th, when he kidnapped and killed 12-year-old Kimberly Diane Leach from her middle school, hiding her body on a pig farm. Then, again, his reckless leadership attracted the attention of the police. When they realized that his plates were for a stolen car, they stopped him and found the identity cards of 3 dead women in his car, linking him to the murders. Bundy told the officer who arrested him, "I wish you had killed me." During his ensuing trial, Ted Pandy was ignoring the advice of his lawyer and taking on the responsibility of defending himself, angering even those who were assigned to work with him. Defense investigator Joseph Alloy said, "I would describe him as close to being to the devil that he is not like anyone I have met in my life." Bundy was eventually convicted and placed on death row at Rayford Prison in Florida, where he suffered abuse from other prisoners, including gang rape by 4 men, some sources say, and had a child with Carolyn Boone, whom he married during his stay. While on trial, Bundy was finally executed by an electric chair on January 24, 1989, and hundreds of people gathered outside the courtroom to celebrate his death. Eleanor Rose, mother of victim Dennis Neslund, said, "For everything he did to the girls, beating, strangling, humiliating their bodies, torturing them, I feel like the electric chair isn't enough for him." Although he confessed to committing several murders before his death, the true number of Bundy's victims remains unknown, and Bundy also denied some of the killings, despite physical evidence linking him to the crimes, and hinted at others that were never proven. In the end, all of this led authorities to suspect that Bundy had killed anywhere between 30 and 40 women, making him one of the most notorious serial killers in American history, and perhaps the definition of absolute evil. If you like this episode, please subscribe and like.